Why can't you be open to the supernatural?
Because I was open and I didn't feel anything when I was a Christian, so I turned away from it.
What on earth were you waiting to feel as a Christian?
So this girl decided to not follow God because she said she didn't feel anything. And it kind of goes crazy because of Cliff and his amazing answer. So let's get right into it. Shout out to Cliff and give me an answer. Hopefully I can meet him one day. Here we go.
I don't believe that he is a god.
Okay, why?
Because I don't believe that what he might or might not have done was supernatural.
But if he rose from the dead, wouldn't you call that supernatural?
I don't believe he rose from the dead.
Okay, why?
Uh,
You're a religious studies major, so what do you believe about Jesus?
I believe he was a historical figure.
Why?
Because I'm going to grant you the assumption that everything in the Bible is true.
Well, if everything in the Bible is true, the Bible records the resurrection of Christ.
Okay, then even then, if I believe that, then I can believe in other miracles, but I still don't believe that that is like the one true religion because it's about as convincing as other religions.
Okay, what's so convincing about Islam?
It's not the same way Christianity is not.
Well, if Jesus rose from the dead, the evidence is he's reliable. Ma'am, if you die and rise from the dead, I promise to listen very closely to everything you have to say, because the evidence is you're reliable. So if Jesus Christ really historically rose from the dead, the evidence is he's reliable. You can trust it.
Then wouldn't winged horses have flown down in Islam?
No. There's no record in the Gospels of winged horses. The historical record is that Jesus rose from the dead.
Okay, then why would you not give that same assumption to other religions?
Well, you better believe I better be open. I better read the Quran. I better read the Bhagavad Gita. And then I better first ascertain, are they making an historical claim? Obviously, the Vedas and Upanishads are not. They're obviously communicating truth through mythology, which is fine, but they're not making an historical claim. Obviously, the Quran is making an historical claim. Muhammad really lived. And I think the evidence is that's correct. Muhammad was a real historical person. Now I got to read about it. How did Muhammad live his life? How did he treat people? What did he teach? And then I got to figure out, does the evidence point to Muhammad being reliable or does it not? I got to do the same thing with the Gospels. I got to read about Jesus, how he treated people, what he taught, how he died, how he rose from the dead, and I got to decide, does the evidence point to Jesus being reliable or does it not? So what do you think?
So you only believe in it through the process of elimination, like a multiple choice test? You've eliminated Islam, you've eliminated Hinduism, you've eliminated Cow Taoism.
No, I look for the evidence that supports Muhammad, Siddhartha, Gautama Buddha, the avatars of Hinduism, Shirley MacLaine, Joseph Smith, Jesus Christ. And the evidence is that Christ lived the type of life that in my best moments I would wish I could live, but I haven't. The evidence is he taught amazing ethical teachings, incredible. The evidence is he died loving and forgiving his enemies from a cross where he was crucified. And the evidence is that 3 days after he died, he rose from the dead. That's why I trust him. And I have told you, and I'll tell you again, if you die and rise from the dead, I will listen very closely to everything you have to say. Because the evidence is you are reliable.
So I don't think it's that wrong to think we are applying like an equation. It's not just like that, but you can look at some other religions and say, that's not very reliable. There's not even really any sources for anything to back it up besides the copy that we have. At the end of the day, Jesus is more reliable. We have over 5,000 Greek manuscripts to prove like the Bible is actually what it says it is. There's no contradiction.
That makes sense?
So do you aim to live by his loving and kind example? Why are you out here intentionally belittling and misunderstanding students?
I have not belittled anybody. I have had strong disagreements with people. And in a liberal arts education, we believe in a free exchange of ideas, which means when we disagree, we go at it in terms of why do you believe what you believe? What's the evidence of what you believe? Now, if this man tells me he's an atheist, I respect him, I love him, but I'm going to ask him hard questions, the same way I hope he's going to ask me hard questions. I'm going to ask him, why are you an atheist? What's the evidence? And if I see the evidence is lacking for his atheism, I'm going to point that out. The same way I hope that he's going to ask me, well, Cliff, why do you believe in Jesus? What's your evidence? And if my evidence is lacking, I hope he's going to point that out to me. He was going to say, Cliff, that's irrational that you believe that Jesus rose from the dead. It's irrational. And I'm going to say, okay, fine. Why do you say it's irrational? And if he says, because there's no historical evidence, I'm going to say, I'm sorry. Here is the historical evidence that Jesus did rise from the dead. So I'm not belittling him because we disagree. No, I tolerate him, I respect him, and we disagree.
Okay, so outside of the Bible, what is the historical evidence that Jesus Christ was dead?
Thousands of Jewish people who were monotheistic Jews, who all of a sudden changed. And instead of worshiping on Sabbath, Saturday, they started worshiping on the first day of the week, Sunday, which is a radical departure of their Judaism, which taught Sabbath. And the reason they worshiped on the first day of the week, these thousands of Jews in the first century, is because Jesus rose on the first day of the week.
So I understand they're relying on their faith, but where is the evidence that Jesus physically rose from the dead?
People saw him. Jewish people saw him risen from the dead, and because they saw him risen from the dead, they put their faith in him, and they moved from Sabbath worship to worshiping on the first day of the week. And that is outside of the New Testament, that record of Jewish people worshiping on the first day of the week in celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
I understand that proves that people were Christian. I understand that. But that doesn't validate the basis of Christianity that you're using as evidence.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
They
changed
said
their habits.
they saw Jesus Christ risen from the dead.
I agree that you are.
If someone saw you steal from that bank, that is evidence. You saw him, and they would get arrested because we had people testify against that person. That's evidence. Being able to see him is evidence. How much more do you need? How much evidence do you need to believe that Alexander the Great was who he said he was, even though those documents are 300 years after he was even alive? People have hallucinations of loved ones that have died pretty often. That's what Corp said. Okay, yes, but do 500 people have the same exact hallucination? I don't think so. And people need to stop acting like the Bible doesn't count. They're literally written documents that were taken and put together. I'm sorry. That counts for any other document.
That.
They said that, not me. They claim to have seen Jesus Christ risen from the dead, and they started worshiping on Sunday because of that, in celebration of what they saw, the dead Christ risen from the dead.
Yes, and that's a claim, which means there's a measure of skepticism.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So how do you work through your skepticism?
Exactly.
You know, I'm a skeptic about whether you're really here. I don't know that you're really here. I don't know that my eyesight tells me the truth about reality, so I don't know that you're really here. Really? Right about now, I got to make a decision. Is my skepticism good, or is my skepticism, hyper-skepticism, unhealthy? My fist stops here, because although I'm skeptical that he might not be here, no, the overwhelming evidence is he is here, and my fist better stop here, and I better not swing through his handsome face.
I understand.
Yes, I can be skeptical about Jesus' resurrection, but if the overwhelming evidence is people saw him and then they were willing to die for what they had seen, the dead Christ risen from the dead, I can be skeptical all day long, but I better make a correct decision. He rose from the dead. That's what the evidence points to.
If I met you 2,000 years from now and he said, oh yeah, I saw a man standing here with a gray beanie on his head.
Yeah, solid.
That's not convincing for me.
Okay, what does it take to convince you?
Okay, how about a photograph of Jesus? I'm being sarcastic.
I hate photographs.
That's why I said I'm being sarcastic.
And guess what? Do you really think that Forrest Gump met President Kennedy because it's in a photograph? It's in a movie? You can doctor photographs pretty easily. So are you sure you want to base your eternity on a photograph?
Are you sure you want to base your eternity on a single religion by that logic?
Oh, absolutely. Jesus lived an incredible life. By the way, Christ has impacted this world more than any other one individual. So you better, if you claim to be an educated person, read the Gospels and figure out, is Christ a quack? And if he is, reject him. Or if he's the truth, you better put your faith in him. But you better study him because he's influenced this world more than any other single individual. So if you claim to be an intellectual, if you claim to have a brain that's working, you owe it to yourself as a thinking person to read those Gospels, right?
I have. I've centered my major around it. Exactly.
Good. Then why do you not believe in the resurrection of Christ?
Because I don't believe in the supernatural. It's fantastic. It doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, but that's not historical. That's a philosophical presupposition. Because you don't believe there's a supernatural God, therefore you believe miracles are impossible. Therefore the resurrection could not take place. That's not honest history. That's a philosophy of naturalism that limits all of reality to matter and energy.
Exactly. Which
Well, why would you adopt that philosophy and major in religion?
because, as you said, Christ has impacted this world in ways we cannot imagine. So even though I might not believe in Christ or believe in the book that you are touting, I still can see the impact on the people around me. This very discussion shows that there's something more important than a figure who may or may not have lived 2,000 years ago. I can still see the impact. I can still see how.
She's literally saying that this figure may have lived or not. That's crazy. It seems like to me like she's that person who can't ever commit to anything, to admit that anything is true or false. That's absolutely insane to think about. Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on this? And to think she's like, yeah, possibly other religions could be right. Okay, but if Jesus is right, he's the only one that is right. If Jesus is such a great figure, wouldn't you want to come to know what he is saying? Wouldn't you want to put some gravity, some weight on what he's saying? And then when you realize what he says is that he is the only way, the truth, and the life, and people are still talking about him, that mean possibly that he is the only way, the truth, and the life.
Affects our environmental policy.
Okay, good. So you're into a sociological study of a phenomenon called Christianity.
Exactly.
Well, but if you're honest with yourself, you've got to acknowledge that Christianity is not a sociological phenomenon based on a feeling. It's a sociological phenomenon based on an historical claim that Jesus lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead. And people in Africa, South America, Asia, United States believe in this Jesus. So we're not talking about nationalism or colonialism. We're talking about people around the world who insist that Jesus Christ has changed their life and that he is the truth. Pretty intense. So I think you got to do a little more than just, well, because I'm a naturalist, I don't think it happened, the resurrection. That's not fair. You got to be open to supernatural.
I am. That's why it's my major.
No, you're not. You said you don't believe in the supernatural.
Yes, and I can still search for what other people find spiritual or meaningful.
Well, why can't you be open to the supernatural?
Because I was open and I didn't feel anything when I was a Christian, so I turned away from it.
What on earth were you waiting to feel as a Christian?
God's love.
God's love. So how do you feel God's love?
I don't. That's why I'm not a Christian.
Well, why did you set this standard of, unless I feel his love, he doesn't love me?
No, that means if God is supposed to love every individual, I don't see any proof in the science. I don't see any proof in the science, and I don't see any proof beyond the science, like in human relationships.
That's crazy. I think she just gave away all of her points, her credibility by saying that because I didn't feel God's love, therefore I don't think he's real. That's essentially what she is saying, and that's sad because she put this entire crazy expectation on God to fulfill whatever that need she was hoping for, and she didn't feel it. Therefore, now I don't believe in God, which is sad. Sometimes you're not gonna feel loved. You're not gonna feel like God is close to you. You're not gonna feel anything. That doesn't mean he doesn't love you, because he does.
Personal interaction, something beyond the physical tangible. If I don't feel anything beyond that, if I don't see anything spiritual in this world, then what reason do I have to believe?
You've never experienced the love of a person?
I've never experienced the love of Christ.
Have you ever experienced the love of a person?
Probably not.
Not?
Aww.
All right, well, that's tragic. I'm
I never
sorry.
quantify it without a brain scan, as you said.
Yeah. My point is, you will never be able to x-ray love. You'll never be able to get love on a brain scan. Why? It's an intangible value. But your experience of life hopefully will show you that love is real, even though you can't graph it on an MRI scan or on an x-ray. Why? Because you experience love from others. And when you experience love from others, you begin to understand there's more to reality than just the material.
All right, but that still doesn't lead me to that love being the same as a supernatural love. Those two things don't have to correlate.
If there is this intangible value of love, it means there's some type of God who creates that intangible value.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
How?
Because if there is no God, there is no intangible, real value of love. There are chemicals, there's MRI scans and X-rays and blood tests, but there's no intangible value of love because all of reality is matter and energy if there is no God.
But you can be atheist, not believe in God, and still believe in something greater than humanity.
Like what and why?
Okay, love. I could believe in love and still not connect it to a divine being who created it.
But you cannot be an atheist and believe in love because if you're an atheist, you are reducing reality to matter and energy.
Okay, and love could be an energy. We can't quantify all forms of energy.
No, love is a free decision to care about somebody.
Love is not a free decision. Love could be irrational.
Okay, that's where we disagree. I insist that I do not have to love this man. I could be racist. I could be arrogant and look down on him. Or I can respect him and love him. I don't have to do either. And there are too many examples in our culture of people hating and being racist toward this man. I am convinced that none of us have to be racist, that we can choose to freely love and respect each other. But if we believe that we can freely choose to love and respect each other, it means that reality is bigger than matter and energy.
I almost felt bad for her, sadly, because she's like, I don't know if I felt loved, and I'm sorry. And that's why sometimes it can be hard for people to feel God's love if they haven't felt the love of anyone. You know, sometimes you have to experience certain things in order for you to get to know God more. We can't scan love on an MRI, but that doesn't mean love is not real. That doesn't mean love is a thing that we can freely choose to give to someone. And that's absolutely amazing and beautiful. Let me tell you guys, God is love. He loves you. He sent his one and only son to die for you because he loves you. And I encourage you all to go to him, read the Bible, spend time in the word, getting to know him. Ask God, ask the Holy Spirit to speak to you and lead and guide you and to open up your heart so that you can come to know him more. You're not going to be able to get 100% facts and proof to be like, now I know that Jesus is God. Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of orphans, fight for the rights of widows. You know, this kind of reminds me of, I think it's in Timothy where he talks about religion. Real religion is taking care of the orphans and the widows. So he must have been referencing this